Like, I think I traumatized people by all of the things that I was saying out loud.
That was the thing that I couldn't exist at that point.
My brother and my dad would go, "You should never say that out loud to another human being, son."
I wonder, am I a good guy or a bad guy?
And truthfully, the suicidal thinking didn't go away until...
All right, Eric, welcome back to another episode.
It's a pleasure.
You know, a goal of mine in this podcast, the entire podcast, is to really bring in real subjects, real practical things that we all deal with. Be willing to get vulnerable and actually talk about the things that matter to people, you know. And I kind of want to pose a few questions to you because, Eric, you've been through some things that, you know, to very extreme situations, but I think that many of us deal with it. And that has to do with our emotional well-being. And I want to get into what is the essence of being okay, and what is it like when you're not okay? What does it look like? And then what was the process or your journey to go from not being okay to being okay, maybe, or maybe being less fucked up, you know?
Yeah, okay.
Anyway, so I want to unpack this. We're just going to have a conversation about it and just and really explore what this looks like. So let's start out with, what was that journey for you? When did you lose everything? Was it a gradual process? And then how did you find your way back?
Yeah. Oh, man. I'm not sure that I've ever really unpacked it like this before. But...
Well, then I appreciate your courage because, Eric, I know that it's a lot, man. You know?
Oh, it's a pleasure. And I think it's important. It's really important to me that people don't feel like they're alone. I felt like that a lot. I felt like nobody understood what was happening to me, and that was tough. And when I say that I lost my mind, like, what does that mean? I had become maybe more like a house pet and less like a human, but like a deranged house pet. I'm telling you, if you would have said, "Hey, come for a ride with me," I couldn't have sat still. Like when we would go to doctor's appointments and we would pull up to stoplights, my anxiety would peak so much that I felt like I couldn't handle it just stopping at stoplights. And my wife would say, "Do you want to go through the drive-through?" No, I can't go through a drive-through.
You couldn't even make the decision. It all was just a lot.
I didn't even leave my house for like a month.
Wow.
Like it was really bad. And the reason that happened was a combination of things, none of which was really self-destructive behavior. I mean, Brandon, I've still never had a sip of alcohol before.
Right.
You know, like I wasn't, down in the trenches of self-destructive behavior. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Because you know, I've been around a lot of people, like they're doing things that are harming themselves. Like truly. Yeah. You really, there was something going on in your mind.
For sure.
Was it all of a sudden or the gradual buildup? Oh, it probably was the gradual buildup, like you've said before, but how did it get from where you, just to where you had the breakdown? You know, was it gradual to that point, or was there a few moments that it got very real for you?
So I would say that it happened over the course of probably almost a decade. I know that seems like a long period of time, but I was young enough that nobody was testing my testosterone levels. And in the very end, it turns out I had a testosterone level of 98 on a scale of 300 to 1,000. And truthfully, the suicidal thinking didn't go away until the testosterone got back in my body. Okay. So that process had been slowly happening for a long time. And you when your body doesn't have the fuel that it needs to run, because my male body needs testosterone. The absence of that testosterone really caused some problems for me, mental and physical. So, the counselors that I would talk to had some good stuff. Like I did EMDR therapy, which was very impressive. The 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 psychiatrist, mostly just a pill pusher, really. It was just getting people in and out and getting them prescribed stuff. And once I was no longer a candidate for psychiatric medications, it almost seemed like he really didn't know what to do with me anymore, which was kind of weird. And this is scaring me more and more and more. And it was actually a friend that called me that said, "Can I give you some advice?" That meant everything. And this is what I realized. And I would love for people to hear and understand this. You're thinking, well, I shouldn't interject myself in this situation because I'm not a trained professional. But trained professionals have to mind their P's and Q's. They have a scope of medicine or practice in which they need to fall under. That does not exist for friendship. Right. It just doesn't. Friends and family can say things to you that medical professionals will not say. They can do things for you that medical professionals will not do.
Yeah, they don't have to work within that tight scope. And that's coming from my dad is a doctor, and my uncles are lawyers, and so they have to operate within certain boundaries. So I have a question. When you were saying how alone you felt, do you think that you were alone in many ways, in the sense of, why did you feel alone, first of all, and then to build off of that, do you think you actually were alone, or do you think, was there something that was keeping you from connections and things, or maybe a little bit of both? Because I think a lot of us I feel like that a lot, and I want to see maybe where your mind was in that aspect.
Yeah. That's actually, I think that there's something to the connection thing. I've always connected really easily with people, and I just don't put off that dangerous vibe. I'm a big dude, but I don't think people are afraid of me. People were afraid of me then. My eyes were the eyes of like a cornered wolf, and I think it scared people.
Interesting. So, do you think
I was suffering so much?
Were you? So people were maybe subconsciously or consciously avoiding you.
Yeah. I think this happens all the time. When people hit the roughest patch of their life, people are like, "Ooh, I can't be around them right now," and it isolates them even more.
Wow. So that's true, because that's certainly true in my life, and it's kind of like whenever you're talking about dating or sales or any kind of thing where there's emotional transfer, people gravitate towards people that they feel good energy around. And as humans, we're very emotional beings, and when your energy is very limited or in pain or scared, people they do retract from you a lot. That happened to me a lot in my darkest moments, and it was extremely lonely. So maybe it is a little bit of both. I'm kind of pushing people away with my energy. Maybe that's what you were doing. You said a friend reached out, so obviously someone was a little bit aware. Do you feel like friends were reaching out and you just couldn't connect with them still, or did you feel like people really were just not having your back type thing?
So people would text me and I wouldn't text them back. Like people would come over to visit and I would go in my room. That's not me. But at some point, even when people came over to visit, I couldn't have had a conversation with him. I lost my mind. It was gone.
Man.
Yeah.
Yesterday, if it's okay that I pull this up, I bring this up, and this is deep shit.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, because we talk about how, you know, we've gone through hard times, and all of us, and everyone in life is going through things, or they have been through things. They will go through hardships. But, you know, you're saying, I've been through all this shit, but once I lost my mind, there's nothing like losing your mind.
Yeah.
That was the thing that couldn't,
Yeah.
I couldn't exist
Yeah.
at that point. So when it got to the point where you felt like you did lose your mind, what did that look like? Maybe you can talk a little bit about how it got to the point where you lost your mind,
Mm-hmm.
and then what it looked like, and then what did you do to, like, how did you snap out of it? What is it that people did to
Mm-hmm.
reach you? You were hiding in your room. You wouldn't respond to text messages. What is it that kind of got you to wake up and to connect with them, or to have the energy to do so?
Yeah. So it would be nice if it were just one thing that would be easy to explain.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly, the medical treatments that I participated in, besides the pharmaceuticals that made things worse, but the other stuff was helpful. It really was.
Okay.
And, you know, this is kind of interesting. I I had stopped going to church for almost a year before the mental health crash.
Mm-hmm.
And at least some of that was, I just felt no positive emotion. And nobody ever taught me how to worship God minus positive emotion. And so I thought, I'm done with this stuff.
No one taught you how to worship God without positive emotion.
Yeah.
Interesting thought.
And if they did, I certainly didn't learn the lesson. And so I found myself praying way more than normal. And I remember vividly when I came to the realization that no one was coming to rescue me. And do you know that Liam Neeson movie, Taken?
Yeah.
Where he tells his daughter, you're going to be taken. And I was like, I remember the moment thinking, my mind is getting away from me. It's going to go. My mind is going to be taken from me. And it was terrible. It was, I can't even explain how scary it was.
Yeah.
I knew it was going to happen.
So,
But I didn't answer your question, but go on.
well, no, you're getting into the deep root, the trenches, you know, the fear that comes when you can feel it losing, you can feel yourself losing it. I've tasted that before.
Mm-hmm.
It's scary as hell. I've tasted where I felt the desperation and the disconnect from reality, or you have a hard time knowing what reality
Mm-hmm.
is. So, tell me a little bit about when you did lose your mind, what it was like.
Mm-hmm.
Before we go into actually what fixed, you know, like what you were able to get out of it, how, if you're comfortable with it,
Yeah.
how was your mind? Like, how did it look?
Mm-hmm.
What were the thoughts? What were the feelings? What was around you? How were you interacting with people, your
Yeah.
kids and your work, your church, and
Yeah.
your community?
Right. So I found myself absolutely terrified of getting in trouble.
Mm.
You know, like I remember I was talking to this guy one time that was struggling, and he kept on saying, I just got to get better to go on this hunting trip. I just got to get better because I have this hunting trip coming up. And I'm like, man, you're not even employable right now, and you don't care whether you're alive or dead. And he was hyper-focused on a hunting trip. I did stuff very similar to that. Like I kept going, I can't lose my job. I can't lose my job. And my family's like, Eric, people lose jobs every day. You're going to be okay. But the idea of losing my job terrified me.
Interesting. Yeah, because that's something I've noticed with people when they're dealing with trauma, and I've dealt with that. It's like your ability to judge things, it's way off.
Yeah.
The proportions don't match logically, and so it's hard to reason, or you put way too much weight in certain areas. Like, he's literally suicidal, but he can't stop thinking about how he wants to get ready for this hunting trip.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, hey, how about, buddy, try to stay alive first. Like, how
Yeah.
to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, but it's
or maybe you shouldn't even have guns, let alone go on a hunt trip.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, so that was that apparent to you? Like, did you feel like your reasoning was off base big time, or were you self-aware of that?
So here's the problem with what was happening to me. And we talked about this before when we talked about the small things that you pick up on in poker. I do that. I've done it my whole life. You know, some people call it a trauma response. I don't know if that's that for me. I just notice little details. When my students walk in the room, I'm like, that kid didn't sleep good. This guy's thirsty. Give everybody knuckles when they walk in the room. I can tell immediately. I can stand in front of a room of my students, and I can pretty much tell you what's going on internally inside of all of them.
Interesting.
The problem with that is when I lost my mind, that didn't go away. I just didn't know what it meant.
Ooh.
And it was scary. So I would be like, that person's not okay.
Wow.
But I couldn't gauge what not okay meant.
Yeah. Or you still... I bet you it was even crazier because you still sensed all this person is exhausted. This person is hurt right now. And then you might make big judgments based off, like, you're like, I don't know how to respond or even what.
Or like compassion fatigue, which is real. Like I could tell when people were getting tired of me. And I was like, oh no, they're going to give up on me. That person's going to give up on me. And I couldn't just see it for what it was. I could see it, but not for what it was.
Yeah, which is basically...
Yeah, everything was just turned up real high.
So, everything felt like a 10. You know, your kid crying maybe, or a student, like, forgetting homework, or forgetting to do his homework, or you trying not to be suicidal. It all was at such a high level that it all felt...
Or like when I did start driving again, if I like didn't come to a complete stop at a stop sign, I was going to go to jail.
Wow.
Or like I would walk a lot, and I would walk on the road, and all of a sudden I was like, oh my gosh, I'm walking on the wrong side of the road. I could go to jail. Brandon, I live at the very end of a dead-end road. Ain't nobody cares.
Yeah, but Inviter, Texas.
Yeah, Inviter, Texas. Like, but it was terrifying. But man, I work for some good people. I had some good bosses, and my immediate supervisor, she like grabbed me. I'm with Teresa, my wife, and she goes, Eric, no one's giving up on you. And I was like, whoa. That's what I needed to hear. And then, like, you know, some of the downtown people would come by my house to check on me, and it was like, yeah, it's so hard to understand why people love you, even when your brain is healthy. When you have lost your mind, it makes absolutely no sense why anybody would care about you. So when you can feel that emotion from them, it's beautiful.
I love that. So when you did experience that, was that something that you were second guessing often? Because you were, am I out of my mind? Am I just thinking they actually care? Or did you feel clarity?
It was I was so convinced that everybody would be better off without me that I didn't know what to make of things that I knew I was identifying correctly. I know what that is. That's love. I know what that is. That's loyalty. But I just couldn't understand why somebody would feel love and loyalty towards somebody that everybody would be better off without.
Wow. Jeez.
And I think that happens all the time to people, Brandon. I don't think that just happens to me.
Mm-hmm. Like on a lower scale, maybe not to the extreme of completely losing your mind or becoming suicidal. I 100% agree. I think most people do struggle with. You know what's interesting is I was talking about this with my ex-wife Aubrey,
Mm-hmm.
and we both were talking and saying I think that the world is going through significant change, and people are literally evolving, like almost like X-Men.
I feel that.
Like there's an evolution happening, and evolution requires death. It's like the strongest adapt, or you die, or you just stay the same. And it's not an evolution of physicality like it might have been in the past, but it's an evolution of there's just a significantly higher amount of information that we upload every day.
Yeah.
Emotionally, we're experiencing emotions to a way stronger degree than they were in the past, because there's so much new data, there's so many new complex relationships and problems, and we're also hearing so much new information all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we haven't developed the right filters in a lot of cases. A lot of things seem important, right? We're getting 1,000x, 10,000x the data that people were 200 years ago, and easily. If we don't have a good filter system, then everything is just important. And then there's so much stimulation that happens, and our brains get anxious because there's so much happening. And if you don't, basically the people that are evolving are the ones who are learning how to become emotionally intelligent, in the sense of knowing their own emotions, having the ability to look at it and see what it is, and then connect with people emotionally. And the people that are refusing or just hiding from those emotions, they're almost becoming, not just staying the same, but it's almost like there's a destruction's happening a little bit. You know, it kind of like when you're losing it's literally destructive. Mm-hmm. And I've experienced that as well. I love that we're going into this aspect, because I mean, maybe there's not this evolution in the way I like to think of X-Men. We're becoming mutants.
I'm actually good with that too.
All right, just for fun, let's just say that we're Avengers and X-Men, and we're mutating.
Yes.
But I feel like you figured some things out, Eric. When you were in this super dark place, what was it that helped you, helped you have the strength to get out of your room, or to respond to a text, or to even care? And I know you've talked about there's a big choice that you made at one point. Maybe do you want to kind of get into the path to emotional well-being?
So I had to learn to live in the present, and I know people say that all the time. I was imminently suicidal. I had to learn to live in the present, because the painless present was the only place that I was able to gain my mind enough to fight back. Another thing that I did well later on in the illness was I didn't isolate myself. Very often when people are starting to do poorly, they'll take 2 steps forward and 1 step back, and 2 steps forward and 1 step back. That really didn't happen to me. Once I started getting better, I kept getting better, because I wouldn't isolate myself, and it locked my efforts in place. Like, I would go hang out with my mom. I spent a lot of time with my mother-in-law. I had a really close support system of people around me.
Do you feel like when you say isolate, because we are talking about emotions, and I think I mean, obviously it's very easy to be with people, but to not emotionally be with them.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like when you say you weren't isolating yourself, are you literally just talking about actually physically being with people a lot, or are you actually talking about emotional
Yeah.
isolating or
So
as well? Does it make
I
sense what I'm?
I would talk to people and like strange stuff, like I can't remember the name of this Latin American poet. I think it was Jose Marti, but he says, "Antes de morir me quiero echar mis versos del alma." Before I die, I've got to get rid of the verses in my soul. I felt like I was dying and that I would probably die by my own hands. And there were verses in my soul I had to get out. So imagine a family therapy session that took place for months that nobody really wanted to participate in. Like, I think I traumatized people by all of the things that I was saying out loud. And I now see that that was not super healthy, but I didn't know what to do otherwise.
Which part was not healthy? Sorry.
So it felt like there were emotions trapped inside of me,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't know how to get them out. And so I would say things like, all right, I have a strong feeling, a strong emotion attached to this memory. So I would tell people that memory, and like my brother and my dad would go, you should never say that out loud to another human being, son. Everybody's got stuff that they should never say out loud. But I was saying them out loud because I needed it to get out of me, but I didn't know how to do it. And it was making people not want to be around me even more. They were sharing the burden.
Wow. Okay.
And I see that a lot in people when they're real low, they want to participate in conversations that other people don't want to talk about. Because if you're healthy, you're like, I ain't addressing that. I'm healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so then how did you get it out? I mean, I guess you weren't doing it healthy at first, but
Yeah.
it sounds like you were pretty open about the struggles you were having at this point now. It
Yeah.
sounds like you're probably almost
Yep.
saying not too much, but you were even saying
Mhm.
very strong things. Um, I've seen a lot of people do that, and I can almost just pick out specific people in my mind that I've seen this journey with, and just some things they said was like, ooh, interesting, wow, that's
Mhm.
important, that's a huge, it's like, in poker, I like to create these baselines of people, what they're like in their natural state, and then all of a sudden, boom, there's a spike,
Mhm.
something happened, I don't really know what it means, but that is something that would be very important to look at,
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
just look at it and just see what it could mean.
Mhm.
And a lot of times those are indicators of if someone you love or you care about, they're struggling and
Yeah.
they don't know how to express it. They don't know how to reach out emotionally.
Yeah.
Um, does that make sense what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yes.
So well, first of all, were you actually pretty open about the dark things and the dark thoughts with people?
Yeah. Way more than I should have been.
So you're just scaring the hell out of people
Yeah.
then, just like saying
Yeah.
very dark things.
Yep. And some of that is, people like to pretend, and I think pretending is really prominent in religious cultures too, where people are like, I need to pretend to be this way in order to be accepted by my group.
Mm.
And so I stopped pretending, and people didn't know really how to handle that. But I can think of two circumstances, events, all right? Not like, I know people like to talk about, well, I did this many push-ups a day until I could do, and some of it was compounded like that for me, but two events.
Okay.
One time I was praying, not understanding why I was still feeling like this, because it's like, I remember as a kid praying to find my keys and stuff like that because I lost them and I was frustrated. This was not like that. I I was suicidal, man. And the emotional pain that I was in every day and like the neurological pain was such that I was like, oh, I don't understand why God is not helping me. And then I had an epiphany. It was that my agency is the only weapon down in this hole with me. And religiously, I had always been taught that agency is at the center of God's plan. And that made sense globally, but I'm like, holy cow. Agency is at the center of God's plan for me. I'm going to have to start making choices. Instead of being acted upon, act. And so I personally believe that very few people ever repent of anything. I think people stop doing things, but like repentance, to have a new mind, a fresh outlook, a rejuvenated worldview, just don't think it happens very often. And like, I grew up in a faith where we were taught daily repentance, which I'm like, find me a mental health professional that thinks it's a good idea to think of all the terrible things you did that day before you go to bed every night. and like feel guilty for them and then swear to not do them tomorrow when you know you're going to do it again. No, it was a terrible idea. That doesn't make sense to me. I'm sure somebody could explain it to me, but it does not make sense to me. And so what I did
certainly isn't pleasant.
No.
Yeah.
So I thought, okay, I need to stop viewing the world around me in terms of good and bad and right and wrong and righteous and wicked and worthy and unworthy. And I need to use my agency to connect with myself, to connect with nature, to connect with God, to connect with God's children. And so all of a sudden I had a plan, but I wasn't quite sure how to put it in place. And I had a moment. You looked at me like you had a question.
No, they keep going.
Okay.
I'm loving this. Yeah.
So I had a moment where I didn't know what it was at the time. Do you know the story of Hernan Cortez, the guy that took over the Aztecs?
More or less.
He's a Spanish conquistador.
Yeah. Kind of a hard. He's a pretty tough dude.
There's a story, and I wasn't there. I don't know if it's true or not, but the story goes that Hernan Cortez drew a line in the sand and said, all of you guys that want to go back to Spain, here's the ships. You can take that ship. The rest of you guys, we're going to go get this gold for God and glory. And so when the people crossed the line, Hernan Cortez slaughtered them all and burned the ships and said...
He actually killed the people that went in.
Yeah, he just needed to know who wasn't in, right? So I had a moment in my mind where I'm like, I burned the ships, man. I don't even know how to explain it. This darkness, and it was, people want it to be light. It was not light, Brandon. It was pure, inky, comforting darkness that just flowed into me. And I'm like, under no circumstances will I take my own life. I don't care if my limbs fall off. I don't care if I lose my family and my job. I don't care if I'm alone up underneath an underpass. I'm not going to kill myself. And it was like I realized at that point that I had way more control over my own situation than I did. I've since learned what that darkness is. I didn't know at the time. Carl Jung calls it a shadow self.
Okay.
It's the part of you that's dark. And so you see people say, I just can't watch that suffering. Well, I was doing that to myself. I was being triggered by observing my own suffering. And all of a sudden I was like, oh, I could watch myself suffer. I can do it. I can actually make peace with observing my own suffering.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it was very weird. But Carl Jung says that in order for your branches to go higher into the light, your roots have to go deeper into the darkness. And the roots went real deep. And I'm like, ooh, I can do something with this. And actually, I get that out of ice baths now too.
You get the darkness.
People are afraid of ice baths because they think it takes something from them. They think it takes away their comfort, and they think that it takes away their ability to breathe because they're hyperventilating, which are terrifying, and they think it takes away their body heat. No, it fuels me. It fuels the dark part of me that's meant to survive, and it makes it where I can go a little higher into the light.
Wow.
I freaking love ice baths.
I love that, man. I have to say this because we've already talked about X-Men and Avengers, but one of my favorite heroes ever, probably in the top 3, is, of course, Batman.
Yes.
And, he's in that movie where he falls in with the bats. And he's terrified of the bats. He's in this dark cave, and it's just this fear, this overwhelming, paralyzing fear.
Yeah.
And it's almost like he sinks into it. Instead of, like, hiding from it, and he was hiding for a while. But then he just fucking takes it, man.
Yep.
He just gets he absorbs it and becomes it.
Yeah.
And it's like this darkness.
Literally,
I mean, Batman's like the Dark Knight. He's a dark hero, but he's a good guy still. But I feel like it also enabled him. His capacity to do more in the light became 10x'd because he was able to understand that darkness and that fear. That's kind of how liberating that must have been for you to feel like I decided not to kill myself. I actually can decide to be present in some of these situations, which you probably didn't feel that power for yourself beforehand.
Yeah. And the suicidal thoughts hadn't gone away yet when I had that experience, but I was able to see the thoughts for what they were more clearly after that. Because there was some part of me that was so deeply dark and I need to explain what the darkness is because I know that scares people. So imagine the yin yang symbol. So you have the bright, orderly, godly, light, white side, and then the other side is chaos. And an enlightened human being will see the order and the chaos as a complete circle. You don't say, well, that part's black and that part's white. That's just the circle. That's what it felt like. It felt like an enlightening moment where I was able to see and make peace with chaos and say, I can live in chaos. I can actually thrive in chaos. And my willingness to accept the inky black darkness of chaos allowed me to be more orderly in my wellness. I was afraid of it before, and I didn't fear it after that. Did that make sense?
Not only did it make sense, I think that if you really are present, and everyone that's listening to this, if you really sit in that, I think if you really can be open, it's almost impossible to misunderstand. Because I think we all relate with this darkness.
Yeah. For sure men do.
For sure men do, yeah. I know. I mean, to be honest with you, a big theme of my life is I wonder, am I a good guy or a bad guy?
Yeah.
I've always kind of considered myself like a Robin Hood.
Yeah. I like it.
He's a criminal. He's a thief.
Uh-huh.
But he also he gives money to the poor, and so he's kind of a good guy and a bad guy.
He's inherently good.
He's inherently good.
Yeah.
Or does it
does it even matter?
Does it matter, right?
Yeah.
Like sometimes the thing is we all have darkness in it and we don't like to talk about it.
Yeah.
In fact, I would even say, in my experience, which I feel like you could relate with, we grew up in the same town and the same community.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that people even almost subtly punish you if you really start talking about the dark tendencies you might feel, or and the interesting thing is, I was having some good conversations with really good friends of mine last night, and something that came up was we were quoting Jordan Peterson.
Mm-hmm.
He said, a harmless man is not a good man.
Dangerous man.
A dangerous man a good man cannot be a good man unless he is capable of being dangerous, unless he is a dangerous man.
Yeah.
And what does that mean? Well, like, a dangerous person is someone that can cause pain and cause violence and can cause very terrible things to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, they wouldn't be dangerous.
Can I explain what it felt like to me?
Oh, I'd love that. Yes.
And this actually boosted my confidence in a strange sort of way too, because I realized that the absolute darkest parts of me are not predatory. That there's no part of me that instinctively seeks to harm or punish others. However, for pretty much all of human history until about maybe the last 100 years, we lived in smaller communities and tribes, and men would go to war, and I mean just chop other people to pieces, and then come back and wipe off the blood and let their kids, play with their kids that night. And
right.
And it's like, what is that? Well, it hasn't gone away. It's still inside of us. And so my ability to protect myself and the people that I love is incredibly dark, but it's not predatory. It's not the same thing.
I think that clarity, the clarity that you have with your darkness, results in confidence. At least for me, it has, because I know I'm not at the point where I even know if it matters in the way I thought it did, Like, maybe it doesn't matter.
Explain that.
Well, maybe things aren't so good and bad all the time.
Yeah.
Maybe things just kind of are, or we don't have to put a label on right and wrong and black and white, good and evil.
Righteous, wicked.
Righteous and wicked. It's just
it's just a complete circle.
Things just kind of are.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of, especially like, when you're thinking in terms of agency, a lot of times you think you have the power to choose. Do you want to be good or do you want to be bad?
Yeah.
And that's not how life is a lot of
Yeah.
times. I mean, there's moments where you make big decisions from very clear things, but I feel like most of life is navigating through the gray and trying, it's finding the clarity and finding principles within the confusing situations and the little light when you're in the dark cave,
That's why there's dabs of the dark and light in the yin yang symbol.
Ooh.
Yeah.
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 Do you feel like, well, I'm loving where this is going, Eric, because, I've seen you, I mean, like you've been so vulnerable, and I know most of the audience they don't know you the way that I've seen you. You're a very charismatic leader in your community, and so I just think that's an important piece of context for people to know, because whenever you went literally crazy or you lost your mind, I think it's important to know that you were you were a charismatic leader, seen by many people that way,
For sure, within my family. Yeah.
Well, do you feel like let me say that, do you feel like you've been able to get some of that confidence back because you were able to make peace with the darkness and the agency involved? Do you feel like that's a crucial key when people are feeling this emotional evolution within themselves, this choice to find awareness and deal with their shit?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that darkness is crucial, or what is that relationship to? what role does that play in people's healing, I guess, in your opinion?
Yeah. So I think it would be really hard for me to understand exactly how what happened to me would work in everybody's life. But the old saying that it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. When I felt hopeless, I felt like a gardener in a war. And as soon as that dark part of me made more sense and that I understood the kind of very difficult things I was capable of choosing, I felt much more like a warrior in a garden.
That's so beautiful, man. Oh, man, that's great. Well, I love how this conversation has gone. To kind of just maybe wrap it up, or a couple ending thoughts to put you on the spot here. Maybe people aren't dealing with suicidal thoughts. Maybe they're not literally losing their mind, but certainly there's many people that are going to listen to this that are they're dealing with their emotional shit and they don't know how to open up. They don't know how to handle it, and they slowly are losing their shit, right? Are there a few principles or takeaways from maybe your experience that you could share with people that really helped you, that maybe that could help people on their journey?
Yeah. So a hard reset is important. Mm-hmm. And I think that if I were going through another rough patch, I would do an intentional 3 to 5 day fast, water fast. And, within about 24 hours, I've done this twice now. Within about 24 hours, you're just flooded with gratitude in your brain. And that might be the best medicine your brain could be bathed in, is gratitude. Huh. And so if you're just feeling just kind of bitter and ungrateful, I think that you need to deprive yourself of all the stimulus. And one of the ways that can happen is through an intentional 3 to 5 day fast. By the end of day 5, if you have held on to the positive emotion, it resets your brain. Wow. Also, an ice bath. There's this Netflix series called Humans at Play, and there's a lady that had been, if I remember correctly, raped, violated in some way, and she had lost her mind. She, all of the terrible things that happen to people when they've been sexually abused. And all of a sudden, the next scene shows somebody cutting a big hole in the ice with a big old chainsaw. And they pull this chunk of ice out, and she's in her swimsuit and fins and goggles, and she's free diving up underneath this frozen lake. Oh. And when she gets out, her lips are blue and she's shaking, and the person with the camera says, "Why do you do this? This is clearly very painful for you." And she says that there are worse pains than physical pain, and this is how I fight back against those pains. I do it all the time. Like when people are like, "This pain I'm feeling, I don't know how to fight back against it." Get in an ice bath. Get in an ice bath. I've mentored like 146 people through their first ice bath on my back porch at this point. And everybody says, "I can't do it." Everybody does it. And everybody says, "I'll just try 3 minutes." And then almost everybody stays for 11 to 15 minutes. And it's like, because at some point you're like, this is how I fight back on the other side of discomfort. It's an earned reward. It's not a pill. It's an earned reward on the other side of discomfort.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hard resets.
Hard resets. I think you can do that through sprinting.
I do that
Lots of people stop sprinting. Man, when I sprint, I'm like, I just feel alive for just a minute. And you're like, yeah, but it doesn't last very long. But it doesn't matter. If your brain can go, "I'm not broken," then you can go, then quit acting like you're broken.
Yeah.
If you can not be broken for 5 minutes after you sprint, then you can not be broken for longer periods of time of that. Put the puzzle together. Figure it out.
And that puzzle, as you've said in the past, everyone's got their own kind of puzzle. So there might be different answers. There might be different solutions for everybody in their unique way.
Mm-hmm.
But whatever it might be for you is hard resets.
Yep.
In principle is like something that really helped you that you think.
Ketamine infusions.
Ketamine infusions.
I am one of those people that thinks that people who have experienced severe trauma should probably seek out a ketamine infusion.
Okay.
I'm
big fan of that.
Can I tell you quickly about one experience I had with a ketamine infusion?
Absolutely, yeah.
Actually, I did 6 ketamine infusions.
Wow.
And the first ketamine infusion that I did, it's called dropping in.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm in a psychiatrist's office. This is all completely legal. And I'm under the supervision of a medical doctor and his nurse. And they put an IV in my arm, and as the ketamine starts flowing into my body, it doesn't mess with your respiratory system. Like, they don't have to put you on oxygen. You can still get big, deep breaths. But, like, I couldn't have scratched my nose. I was like... And then I dropped in. I lost touch of this reality, and I moved to another. And I was met by a spirit guide who was a black woman with dreadlocks.
That would be your spirit guide, Eric.
Yeah.
So, like,
and she had a genie tail. And I've done a summer externship for a couple of years, and one of the other building trades teachers in the area is this older black lady with dreads. And I told her about this ketamine infusion, and she started crying, and we're people. Like, we have a strong bond because of that. And so this spirit guide, who's this black woman, which is interesting to me because I need to mention that I didn't know that this was black or a woman until I came out of the ketamine infusion.
Oh, interesting.
Because race and gender meant absolutely nothing.
They weren't relevant.
And in the deepest recesses of my brain, that meant nothing. I knew that the manifestation of who I should follow was in front of me.
Huh.
And it was a black woman with dreadlocks and a genie tail. So, very interesting. So, she tells me to follow her telepathically, and I'm led to a shallow water reef. And she tells me to take my place on the reef. And I step into the water, and I become a tentacle on a sea anemone in an ocean with trillions of sea anemones. And the whole reef was like, there I am, there he is. But I wasn't a he, it was just a tentacle. And I could have been there 10 minutes, I could have been there 10,000 years, but I connected to the entire ocean. Andrew Huberman calls that oceanic boundlessness. Once you feel it, it changes the way you see the rest of your life. Because every time you're like, I need to do this, I need to do that, actually you don't. Your entire value comes in your ability to connect. And like, it was absolutely beautiful. And one of my real sweet students was having a discussion. She considered herself non-binary, and she was getting really frustrated with some other students trying to explain to her that she wanted to be a they or a them. And so I thought, I'm going to actually tell her this experience. And I said, I don't know how the they and the them thing, how functional it is in a society right now, because we're trying to learn so much. But I can tell you that I have felt what it's like to not be a gender when I was a tentacle on a sea anemone.
Right.
I was a they, them. I was part of that, and it was absolutely beautiful. Now, I don't know, but I also, said earlier in the podcast that, like, my male body that I live in requires testosterone in order to be okay. I know it does.
Yeah.
So I don't know exactly how all that works, but when people say, I don't want to be a he or she, I want to be a they or a them, it's actually a little bit beautiful to me, and it's not I don't have the visceral response towards that other people do.
Yeah. In a few of my psychedelic experiences, I've tasted what that experience is, and it's interesting because you are just more of a thing, or just this like a concept almost. It's kind of beautiful.
Yeah.
I obviously don't. I would probably relate with you that I don't know what it might mean in society or how. But it is a beautiful concept.
Yeah. Can I tell you about the other ketamine infusions?
Yeah. Hell yeah, you can.
So I don't remember the second or the third one. And I was still suicidal, like really suicidal, when I did that first ketamine infusion. And now that experience I think about that ketamine infusion every day, Brandon. It is whenever I just like not okay, my brain can find that experience and think, Eric, you're not okay because you're not prioritizing the connection to the source. And I don't try to complicate what the source is, because the connection is always something different. It could be myself, it could be nature, it could be an individual, it could be the divine, but it's always connection. But the downside of that was, because I was still in so much emotional and neurological pain, I thought, man, maybe if I died, that's how I would feel all the time. So it was actually a pull, which is not good. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It does make sense.
I don't remember the second or third ketamine infusions. I'm sure something happened. But so it's hard to describe anything that doesn't have person, place, or thing. There's no backdrop by which to tell a story. And so I'm sure something happened. But in the fourth ketamine infusion, by the fourth ketamine infusion, I understood more about intention. Things don't make sense to you until you've experienced them sometimes. Like when I was a missionary and I was learning Spanish, I was not progressing correctly because I was still translating in my mind. And someone said, Eric, just let go. Let go. Like, manzana doesn't have to mean apple. And hombre doesn't have to mean man. It just means what it means. And it was strange when I could listen to and think in a whole nother language that didn't have to be English anymore. But it was a letting go. And you don't understand what that is until you've experienced it to some degree.
Yeah, because I just, to validate that point even more, because I totally agree. And I think an example that I think of is I grew up in Podunk, Vidor, Texas, but then I moved around to little other towns, and they don't teach you how to read very fast. And I'm naturally a slow reader already. I think a lot of that's maybe ADHD and stuff. But, about 10 years ago, I got very passionate with reading, but I wasn't reading fast as I'd like because I wanted to acquire way more data, like when I'm faster. So I took some speed reading courses.
Oh, wow.
And basically tripled my reading speed.
That's
at one point.
crazy.
Yeah, you know what the interesting thing about it is there's different techniques, but the biggest one was what we do is when we read, we actually are enunciating the words and are pronouncing them in our head. So we're actually saying the word in our head. The little wolf went running through the woods, and so as I'm reading, I'm actually, even though I'm not saying them out loud, I'm still saying it in my head.
Right.
And there's this interesting thing that you have to stop doing that, because by doing that, you're actually limiting your reading speed to only as fast as you can, as fast as you can speak or talk.
Yeah.
And so once I learned how to let myself go, like you're saying, and stop saying the words, just see the words. And then part of speed reading is opening your peripheral, and you just see phrases and you see sentences.
Yeah.
And as you're letting go, you're not, because it gets tempting. You're reading faster and you're not used to it, and it's weird because it is downloading and you're getting it, but then oh no, I'm going to lose this, and so I start saying the words in my head again. I got to keep up with, and it's like I'm like, ding, word. I'm like, no, let go, and then I'm just like taking it in, and so I feel like that's in life. Like there's this amazing thing that happens, and it's hard to explain it.
Yeah.
But it's like that's what happens.
And once you felt it once, it's applicable to other situations.
Yeah.
So like if a parent is struggling to connect with a child, maybe let go. Let go of the expectations you have for them. Let go of your sense of morality, the principles that have established you, because maybe you don't get to take those things into the connection. It's a letting go.
It's very counterintuitive.
Yeah, yeah, it really is.
It feels like you're losing control and you're letting go. It feels like you're choosing to not care about something, or to, almost like, one more example is almost like I was an athlete. I played football and ran track and basketball and boxed. And when I was not doing as well, I'd run harder, or I'd get mad and hit harder, or in basketball I'd just like hustle more, right? And then you go to golf. Yeah. And if you try to hit harder because you're frustrated, or swing faster, or whatever, rush something because you're trying to like make it go.
Off of Happy Gilmore. You can't play with raw emotion, Happy.
You can't play with raw emotion. That's probably the best thing. I might even take that clip and put that on this thing. But, it doesn't work. It just straight up like it doesn't work.
No, it doesn't.
And there's a finesse and a letting go that has to happen. But it's weird because that letting go is actually what propels productivity. Yes. And awareness.
And I should mention too, when you said that letting go, like there's like it feels like you're out of control. It really doesn't. It's the absolute safest place that I've ever felt in my whole life, to let go. Those moments of letting go are like, oh, this is very safe. It doesn't feel like, so I wonder, like, I teach woodshop, man. I'm not like a psychologist or nothing, but I wonder if people that fear the letting go maybe don't quite understand what it is, because it's not scary.
Yeah. Well, certainly for me, I tend to be a very aware and strategic person, and so the idea of letting go, it feels scary because it feels like I lose all the control that I have to influence the outcome.
You just said it there.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you've said, like we have a lot less control over things than we think. Yeah. And so there's this false sense of reality, false sense of security. Yeah. And reality whenever we are trying to hold on tight. And so when you can let go of the expectations, like a parent with their child, or what you're supposed to be when you're supposed to be good enough for people or the world or society, when we can let go of things and just kind of get present, like you're saying. Yeah. That is not only arguably, but it's, at least in my life, it's so much more effective. It's so much more practical, and it does feel safe once you're in it. But to take that leap is the scary part, I think. I think it's more of a momentary feeling of fear versus like this.
Not perpetual.
It's
momentary.
Not perpetual if you're doing it right. Yeah. If you're sitting in it because you have let go, but then you keep getting back into trying to control things. Yeah. I think that you are kind of putting yourself through that torturous fear. Yeah. But when you can just let go and then just be present. Yeah. Exist in the presence, like you're saying, then I think that's the secret sauce. This is the secret sauce, man. Like, okay, finish telling me about the ketamine, because so that was your fourth one, but you did 6, you said. Were there other?
Yeah, so the fourth one, I had really started to understand. I knew nothing about ketamine infusions, the first one. By the fourth one, I understood the concept of intention. And the best way I can describe it is, as the medicine is taking you, and it will take you. It's used in emergency rooms and in veterinary clinics for a reason. It will take you. You can shoot an arrow in there with you that's like got a line attached to it, and it can be like a really short message. In mine, I knew that I needed to get back to work for multiple reasons, and mine was, I need to get back to work. I need to get back to work. And so as the medicine's taking me, I shoot that arrow into the experience with me that I need to get back to work. And then when I'm in there, I'm like, I need to get back to work. Okay? And I brought it in there with me. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
And then my brain creates all these stainless steel morgue drawers. And they are maybe about 20 feet high and 40, 60 feet wide. But I knew that they went up and out forever. But there was a floor, and it was like a white marble floor. So I walk across this white marble floor, and I open up one of the stainless steel morgue drawers, and there's a brown canvas body bag inside. And inside, I don't know why I always feel compelled to say this, but I knew it was canvas, but it didn't look like canvas. And it's very important that it's brown for some reason too. But it had like a honeycomb pattern on it, like you see on like hiking backpacks.
Yeah.
But that'll mean something one day. I just know it will. But that's what the body bag was made of.